Just like late-stage capitalism, the phrase third spaces has seeped into the public vernacular for a little while now, and while they're primarily about building social bonds within a community, I believe there's an important psychological element as to why these spaces are so crucial for the basic functions of organized society. Your first space is your living quarters, and your second is a career facility such as a school or workplace. Chances are you're not socializing much at your second space due to societal norms that make anything more than surface-level connections with your colleagues awkward. That's what third spaces are for, fulfilling your genuine psychological need for socializing. Meanwhile, your first space fulfills your need for shelter, and your second space fulfills your need for some continual string of progress in life. They all have their own separate locations and purposes. As for third spaces, libraries tend to be the go-to example because they set a level playing field for all participants, regardless of socioeconomic status, since they're a public service. For the sake of the concept I'm explaining, I'd also add clubs as an example, even if their entry fees break the communal definition most people tend to give third spaces. The similarity between libraries and clubs is that they're less prevalent in American culture than they were a few decades ago, in part due to advancements in technology, sure, but also because the nature of capitalism doesn't easily allow for such spaces to continue existing. Not to mention, a highly divided and isolated populace creates a breeding ground for fascism, as I mentioned in my writing, How Social Isolation Benefits Fascism. Americans have focused on these spaces more as of late because they feel robbed, as if they're missing something important. What they're most likely to say they've lost, highlighted more so due to COVID, are places to find and maintain real social connections in their immediate surroundings. While I have nothing wrong with this analysis, one thing that also seems to be reserved for these spaces is a state of trance. During these tumultuous times, there simultaneously is a common desire for escapism and third spaces, and it seems a lot of people aren't making connections between the two. You don't really want to escape this reality, per se, but rather get a real, genuine break from it. This is an important distinction, as a person who wishes for escape tends to want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Meanwhile, someone who just needs a break is a person who acknowledges the beauty in reality while simultaneously admitting they need a break from its stressors at times. They're not quitting as an escapist would, but simply refueling themselves to better handle taking the bad with all the good that they see in the environment they exist in. You're not achieving a state of trance, a healthy time out from reality, by coming home after a long day of work only to bombard yourself with highly commercialized media chock full of advertisements. It's no different a vice than drinking or getting stoned. You're making yourself numb only to wake up to the same reality you were just trying to escape from. It's the modern hamster wheel, really. You wake up, work yourself tired and stupid, and then come home to numb yourself so you can do it all over again, day after day, until you die. There is more to life than this, and third spaces, along with the trances they provided, were your entryway into this realization. Trance comes primarily in two forms, inhibitory and excitatory. Inhibitory trance is achieved by relaxing yourself, or inhibiting the senses. Many people know about this form of trance through the cartoon cliché of the swaying pocket watch and the feeling of getting sleepy, although it must be noted that this is only one technique of many. Conversely, excitatory trance is about achieving a state of trance by exciting the senses through physical movement, usually dancing or exercise. Regardless of popular tropes, the topic of trance is still going to be foreign to a lot of people. So, another way I could explain entering the state of trance would be that it's about harmony and focus. Your world is made up of many different simultaneous oscillations: wakefulness and sleep, the cyclical beats of music, breathing in and out, fast and slow days of work, the stepping of your feet when you walk, the stressing of syllables as you talk. When these oscillations are made harmonious with each other, trance becomes achievable. Going back to the trope of the slowly swaying pocket watch, the watch serves both as a strong visual focal point and as an oscillation to attach your breathing to, in when it swings left and out when it swings right. In the case of excitatory trance, one might make the oscillations of music and movement harmonious with each other, using the music both as a focal point and as a reference oscillation to match themselves with. These patterns aren't too different from what people were already doing naturally in some third spaces. Let's start with the library as our first example. You might head there with a group of friends and find a book that greatly grabs your attention. You're in an environment that's conducive to relaxation, as it is quiet and you have a reasonably comfortable place to sit as you read. The book becomes your focal point, and your breathing slows both to help you focus on it and because you're reflecting the calm environment you find yourself a part of. It's in this moment that you're likely to have entered inhibitory trance. You'll eventually decide you've read enough in one sitting, only to notice, once you look out the window, that it's dark out. A lot of time has passed without you realizing due to psychological time dilation, a symptom of trance. You then realize your friends already went home for the day. Maybe you text them and ask what's up, and they tell you that they tried tapping on your shoulder to let you know they were going home, but you were so engrossed in your book that you didn't even notice. Unawareness of the outside world, another symptom of trance. Of course, people are entering different depths of trance within these environments, and just because you do these things in this specific place doesn't mean you're guaranteed to enter trance every time either. However, this feeling that people can't seem to entirely put their finger on is what many bookworms tell me they miss about reading during their childhoods. They make the assumption that it was somehow magically easier to enter this state as kids, and in a way it was, because we didn't have to fret over responsibilities or keeping track of time. That was for the adults to worry about. This doesn't mean adults have somehow gone through a neurological change that makes them less capable of trance, but rather that we have to put more conscious effort into this process, whereas before it happened by pure luck and accident. But maybe the library example feels like too much of a coincidence to you, so let's turn to a third space that serves as a demonstration of excitatory trance: clubs. Libraries are a big building you put a bunch of books in so people collectively come there to read, and likewise, clubs are a big building you play a bunch of music in so people collectively come there to dance. In the modern day, we have EDM, or electronic dance music, but before that we had house music and its variants, and before that we had disco, and it keeps going further and further back if you bother to dig enough. Point being, while not every music genre is about dancing, music to dance to is pretty much the first and longest lasting type of music. Quick tangent in regards to types of music. Part of the reason pop seems to garner more hate these days is because we've lost the concept of different music for different places. When you went to the supermarket, they had specialized tape machines which played commercially licensed muzak as you shopped. When you went to a club, the DJ had an exclusive collection of albums from their vinyl pool they're a member of to play for the venue. And then, of course, on your car or portable stereo, you'd listen to pop music. Muzak for commercial areas, club music for clubs, and pop for radio. Nowadays, they just play fucking pop music everywhere. Walmart, the clubs, the same 12 songs on loop on the radio, everywhere. So, I don't blame people for being so burnt out on pop music these days. It wasn't supposed to be like this. We have music for dancing, music that's meant to be disposable, music that's meant to become an earworm, etc., etc. These nuances have been lost with time, in part due to music being less about community or history, and more due to it being a commodity item for big record labels. But I digress. Like I mentioned earlier, clubs are big places playing music that welcome you all to dance, and as such, play dance music. Taking the house genre as an example, DJs have noticed over time that a song BPM of 120 is what keeps people on the dance floor. I'd argue that this is no coincidence, as 120 beats per minute is also roughly one's excited heart rate during activities like exercise or dancing. The clubgoers are making their oscillations of heart rate and dance movements harmonious with the oscillating beats of the music. As such, it becomes more likely that trance is achieved in this type of environment. Even if you didn't know these factors at hand, it becomes obvious if you look at footage of people in clubs during the 80s and 90s. There's plenty of it on YouTube. You're gonna see hours and hours of dark rooms full of people moving around like complete dumbasses. They're not doing that solely because they have yet to worry about everyone carrying a camera with an internet connection in their pocket, but it's also because some of them are in such a state of trance that they're worried more about their movements continuing that state than whether they look like a dweeb. I'd argue further that this is why drugs started to become associated with clubs. People were either jealous of those straight-edge types who could naturally achieve this odd type of body high and tried to replicate it through substance, or those same people who could achieve it naturally wanted to enhance the experience with drugs, effectively becoming psychonauts in their pursuit of chasing the dragon. I know people miss these feelings. Just like with bookworms and the magical feeling of reading as a kid, plenty of people who used to go to clubs miss those experiences dearly. Go to the comment section of any well-viewed house song on YouTube, and you can find plenty of people either praising their rediscovery of that particular song after 2 or 3 decades, or people who miss the good old days when clubs just felt like a different, special reality to them. Earlier, I mentioned that the nature of capitalism and advancements in technology have made third spaces such as libraries and clubs less relevant, but another component of their fading relevance is due to the church. This is a fight that has been going on for hundreds of years, and its contemporary form took shape at the start of the Industrial Revolution. Churches were paid by factory-owning capitalists to ring their bells at the start of the workday because they were trying to force the dominance of time on laborers who were previously very lax about the start and end times of their workday. Even then, capitalists weren't satisfied with this level of control and later complained about what workers did in their free time, claiming that the only valid leisurely activity is studying the Bible, whereas anything else was corrosive to the culture. Historica Civilis tells this story in greater depth in his video titled Work. This is a common theme throughout Christianity's involvement in the prevailing state and economic apparatus. Adam Conover described in his episode on prisons that the original purpose of solitary confinement was to lock a prisoner up with nothing but a Bible, with the hopes that they'd study it and reflect on their actions. With this in mind, it's really no surprise that it's usually Christians constantly bashing how working people spend their time, especially in social settings. There was the Satanic Panic, in response to the rising popularity of Dungeons & Dragons, and around the same time, some studies about using music to help plants grow tried to suggest, with lack of real scientific vigor, that degenerate music, like metal or rock and roll, actively harm plants. And considering that clubs are a place in which you're listening to degenerate music and taking illegal drugs, it's no surprise the Christians really hate those too. Stars forbid you want to read print media other than the Bible in a place such as a library, and modern Christo-fascists will have a heart attack about woke books and go out of their way to ban, if not burn, whichever copies they deem degenerate. What's worse is that Christians don't offer a real alternative. You're not likely to experience trance in a church, considering they only provide music without dancing and reading without meditating. This isn't to say religion of some form hasn't provided trance. Deep prayer or meditating on scripture can promote inhibitory trance. Meanwhile, Sufi Muslims have a practice of chanting mixed with stomping or running in circles, which could unlock a state of excitatory trance. Not to mention, it's a common practice in many native religious traditions to perform special dances and chants, accompanied by an instrument such as a drum. That said, institutionalized religion is certainly not a requirement for trance, considering many people were experiencing such states in libraries and clubs. And as time goes on, we've further secularized trance to take back control from institutionalized religion that conversely wishes to monopolize it as a way of exerting power over us, as if their political and economic power wasn't enough somehow. As much as I'm critical of Abrahamic religion, it's not entirely the fault of their war on entertainment and public spaces that has led to modern humanity being deprived of trance. Another development that's simultaneously trying to claim monopoly over trance is the movement to institutionalize and limit it to sanctioned experiences through strict avenues. And, unfortunately, the public eats up such propaganda. The only writing I've ever taken down due to pushback and shame was called Fixing Sad with Silly. In it, I talked about how each person's experiences with depression are personal, and that people should feel free to experiment with odd techniques of approaching it. In hindsight, that writing wouldn't be up to my current standards, but I sprinkled a bit of its ideas into other writings, such as Advanced Depression and Disco Elysium, where I mentioned that thinking about your problems in the third person, as if you were piloting a struggling character such as Harry Dubois in Disco Elysium, could help you make better decisions in regards to taking care of yourself. Anyways, Fixing Sad with Silly got some comments from viewers trying to call its suggestions dangerous, implying people would follow such advice instead of taking medicine and going to therapy. Putting aside that, especially in America, not everyone has access to such services, their angry comments about this demonstrate that there are people who have seemingly bought into the idea that your average Joe cannot be trusted with trance and thus should only be allowed to do it in the supervision of a professional. Phil Hine summarizes this phenomenon succinctly in his book Condensed Chaos by saying the following. Modern society has tended to hand over the realm of the mythic to professionals, therapists, entertainers, philosophers, and we are, to a large extent, cut off from participation in the mythic world, except, for the most part, sanctioned and sanitized escape routes which support consensus reality even as they provide the illusion that they challenge it. Basically put, even if it wasn't Christians trying to thieve you of a place for trance through culture war nonsense, the state of trance has been largely medicalized to a point where people feel that it's only responsible to do it in a professional setting, the only respected commonplace exception being trance meditation. But this is nonsense. It distrusts the autonomy of the individual and their right to express radical freedom in regards to their own mental space. We shouldn't be celebrating a world in which someone forfeits their mind's own liberation exclusively to external forces. Trance is a powerful tool anyone can learn to use and has many utilities. For example, I have experimented with excitatory trance recently to solve a fun problem. My treadmill has a 3-digit calories burned tracker, and while I'm not expecting any intense accuracy out of it, I really wanted to know what happens when you reach 1,000 calories. Does the number scroll? Does it loop around? Without much use of trance, I get anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes of treadmill time a day at moderate speed. But to complete this fun challenge, I had to achieve a state of excitatory trance. I did a slow warm-up and eventually bumped up the speed to a point where my steps were at the same tempo as the 120 beats per minute house music I was listening to. Meanwhile, I was counting the beats per bar while stepping forward with my left foot on even beats and my right foot on odd beats. Even my breathing was in sync with the rhythm, in on the first 2 beats and out on the next 2. During inhibitory trance, you might experience a flow state. It feels like bashing your head against a problem until it finally clicks. Similarly, in the excitatory trance I was experiencing, the high treadmill speed no longer felt as fast as I had unlocked a physical flow state. Other symptoms of trance, such as psychological time dilation, also kicked in, and the resulting 75 minutes it took to solve the treadmill problem didn't feel like they took that long. By the way, the answer to this problem is that the counter stack overflows. I used excitatory trance to stack overflow my treadmill. How fun. The nice thing, too, about running this experiment is that with all of the endorphins from runner's high, I was able to easily transition from excitatory trance to inhibitory trance by meditating. When your body is relaxed due to runner's high, you're not as likely to need to shift around or scratch your face when trying to meditate. I'm sure this has also been done by accident when people go from the dance floor to the lounge area, experiencing excitatory trance through dancing to then inhibitory trance by lounging. I give these examples because expecting everyone to only interface with trance through meditation restricts people from finding fun and interesting avenues, like dancing, exercising, and reading, which may work better for them. Trance is for everyone, and telling people to just meditate when they can experience similar states of consciousness by other means is a poor way of teaching this valuable skill. I'd go as far as to say that, just like getting good sleep, enough exercise, and eating your veggies, accessing a state of trance regularly is equally as important. Considering that there's research to suggest meditation can physically change the brain, it wouldn't be too much of a stretch to say that other ways of accessing the meditative state could potentially do the same. So, while I don't expect third spaces to make a quick return to come in and save the day for all of us who are trance deprived, it's still something we should make an effort to do. No matter how busy or stressful our lives are, experiencing trance on a regular basis greatly aids in our ability to handle this world instead of deciding to give up by lying down and rotting or throwing it all away. Our environment may change us, but we cannot forget the ripple effect each of us has individually on such a powerful environment.